How's it going, everybody? My name is MDKWLand, otherwise known as MDK, and today we're going to actually go back into Arch Linux. Now, a lot has changed since my initial guide, which I've made addendums to, and you can find them on my channel. But I'd rather just consolidate them, so this will be Arch install guide for October 1st of 2013. So, this isn't using, there's not, anything new right now, but this is just encompassing all the stuff that actually has changed, so, systemd things, and this time around I'm actually going to go through and explain things a lot better than I did before, because I was under the assumption that people can actually use a CLI text editor and not have a problem with it, but I'll go through and explain intricate things like that, and this time around we're actually going to be using GRUB rather than using syslinux. And GRUB actually makes the whole process a lot easier, believe it or not. And you can do an Arch Linux build in less than 20 minutes. So, I already have the virtual machine set up here. It's 4 gigabytes of RAM, 4 cores, and max video memory. It's the same build as before. So let's hop right in it, shall we? So you want to grab the Arch Dual ISO off of, Arch Linux's site. I'll put a link in the description of where you can get that. And there's been certain changes to systemd for DHCP settings, and it no longer uses ETH0. It uses ENP S03 or things like that. And I did a rant video about systemd before, and my opinion has actually changed. Systemd is not nearly as evil as I thought it was, but anyway, we live, we learn. So since we're using GRUB this time around, we actually have to add a new partition. I'm just going to repeat myself, screw it. So we need to add a new partition, and it's going to be devsda, and we're going to call it GRUB. And our GRUB partition is what's needed by GRUB, and it's kind of a little funky, and I'll get more into it once I make it here. So I'm going to use gdisk again, devsda. A lot of people will probably be using MBR rather than GPT, so by all means, use whatever you want. So at this window, we want to press N for a new partition. So this is going to be our GRUB partition. It's going to be 32 megabytes big, and we're going to use ENF02. So this is our BIOS boot partition. So if you ever need to know what the hex codes are for any of these GUID hex codes or whatever you want to call them, press L and it'll list off. So you can see that EF00 is for EFI systems, and 8200 is reserved for swap and different things like that. So the rest of it is pretty much the same as it was in the last video. So I'm going to give 1 gig, and that's going to be our BIOS boot partition. Next one is going to be our swap, so I'm going to give that 4 gigabytes because it has 4 gigabytes of RAM, and you should do either mirror in case you need to do a full dump, but either way, it's 8200 for the Linux swap. Now we're going to do root, which is 10 gigs. That's just going to be all that, and then we're going to grab all the free space. So if you press P, you can see all your partitions. So we have the BIOS bootable partition for GRUB. We have the regular boot partition, we have swap, we have root, and we have home. So we're going to press W to write it and Y to agree to it. Now that that's all done, what we're going to do is set up our file system types. Now, what we don't want to do is format the GRUB, the boot BIOS partition. We don't want to format that. That just stays as is. And technically, it's completely innocuous to your system. Your system is essentially agnostic to the whole idea of it existing. So you do not format your devsda1 if you're following along. Do not format that. That's also another thing. Make sure it's your first partition of your block, because if you don't, GRUB won't find it. GRUB is picky. So what we want to do is we want to do make fs, and I'm going to use extension 4 like I did in the previous video, and we're going to do that for devsda2, 4, and 5. And then we're going to make our swap. So make swap dev sda3. And may as well turn it on while we're here. Swap on dev sda3. Now that that's all done, we want to mount all of our file systems that we just created. So mount dev sda4 as mount. We're going to change into mount. Now we're going to make two directories, boot and home, and we're going to mount them respectively. So dev sda2 is our boots, and dev sda5 is our home. And if at any time you actually screw this up, just press df, and it'll list off all of the things that are currently mounted. Pay attention to the bottom ones, ignore the top, because the top is just everything that's been loaded from the ISO, so you don't really want to pay any attention to that. So dev sda4 is our mounting part. It's mounted to mount, which is dev sda4 is our root partition. Dev sda2 is our boot partition, so it's /mount/boot. Dev sda5 is our home partition, so it's /mount/home. So if you ever need, say you screw up and you accidentally mount dev sda5 as tac mount, what you want to do is type umount dev sda5, and it'll remove it, as you can see. So mount dev sda5 as home, and then there it is again. So now everything's all mounted. We want to do pacstrap /mount base and base devel. If you have devel, yeah. Okay, so if you have any intentions of using anything from the AUR, knocked something over. If you have any intentions of using anything from the AURs, so like compiling your own packages and stuff like that, I suggest that you grab the base development package. You don't have to, but it's a suggestion nonetheless. So I'm gonna let this go, and we're gonna grab one more file once I get back, and we're gonna grab GRUB, and then we'll get really into the meat and potatoes of this install. Alright, now that our base devel and base packages are downloaded and installed, we're going to do one more, and we're going to grab GRUB. This is going to be GRUB 2.0. Obviously this isn't going to do legacy GRUB. I actually don't know if you can still get legacy GRUB. I assume that you can get it from the AUR, but I don't think pacman itself actually carries it. But either or. So now that everything's all set up, we want to do we want to generate our fstab. So gen fstab, if I can spell, /mount, two greater than signs, or waka waka, etc /mount etc fstab. Now we can check this, and I'll go into more detail on about this too. So when you're in here, this will be a good thing to explain for Nano. In order to navigate around a Nano, you use the arrow keys. In order to exit, you press Control X. That gets you out of it. So within your fstab here, you should not see dev sda1, because dev sda1 is reserved for GRUB. So it should not have a file system type. It shouldn't have anything at all in here. So we want to make sure all of our file system types are right. So dev sda4, obviously, dev sda4, 2, and 5, we all format it to be extension 4, so therefore it will be recognized. So the generate fstab program, application, whatever you want to call it, itself will only put into the fstab folder what you have mounted. So since we don't have dev sda1 mounted at all, it's not going to put it in here. So if you actually do see it in here, that means you accidentally mounted it and you screwed up along the way. But that's the main reason why you want to check this, is just so that, you know, everything actually makes sense. So like dev sda4 root, dev sda2 boot, dev sda5 home. You know, these are all things. And technically you can, you know, you can edit this string here in order to optimize it, and yeah, I'm not really one to do that. So in order to leave Nano, you press Control X. If you changed anything in the file, it'll ask you, do you want to save it? You press Y and press Enter, and you'll leave. Nano's very simple. I almost question if people ever use Vi, because if you can't use Nano, you're not going to be able to use Vi. So now that our fstab is generated, we're actually going to jump into the arch chroot environment. So arch chroot /mount, and rather than doing it this way, we're gonna do it this way. So we're gonna do /bin/bash. So the previous way was that you just type rch root mount and it brings up shell, and you type bash and just consolidate it all in one command. Now, if you at any time you need to leave the rch root environment, you just type exit, and then in order to get back into it, you type rch root /mount bin /bash. There you go. Alright, now we're going to do our whole locale gen thing. So we're going to do nano, because I love nano so much, etsy locale.gen, and obviously this depends on where you live. I still speaking English and still have this incredibly thick American accent, so I'm going to go with the US UTF and US ISO. Press Control X to leave it, press Y because changes were made, and it'll ask you where you want to write it. Obviously you want to write the changes to the same file, so just press enter. Now that we want to do this, we want to do our locale -gen, which will then generate our locales for us. Okay, now we want to set up the force symlink for the local time stuff. So we're going to do, yes, okay. I have programs running in the background on the other side, and it's just distracting. So ln tech sf user share zone info live in America. So, and now since I actually live in Minnesota, it's different. The only place that's actually for reference for me is Chicago. So, and we're going to put that in Etsy local time. And now, of course, we want to actually put our host name in there. So nano/sc hostname. This you can make anything. You can make it local host. You can make it arch. You can make it MDK. You can make it fucknut. You know, you can make it anything you want to. So now would be the time where we do the wonderful bootloader madness. So prepare yourself. It's horribly fearful. So before I do this, actually, the Arch Linux install guide for GRUB is actually very helpful, very informative. The only thing I don't care about it is that it talks about doing a GRUB as a partitionless bootloader, and that will open a whole gigantic can of worms if you try to do it that way. So I suggest you do not do it that way. So first of all, we want to do our GRUB install. So GRUB install no floppy dev SDA. Now, if that comes up, it's all good. Now all we have to do is generate the GRUB config file. So now we need to generate the config file for GRUB to work. It's actually this is all autopiloted. You actually shouldn't have to mess around with GRUB too much. You can make some optimization changes, but you really shouldn't even have to do that. So we're going to do GRUB make mk config tag O for an output file, and that's going to be /boot, if I can spell boot right, GRUB, I'm on a roll today, man, and GRUB config, and then that'll generate it for us, and guess what, we're actually done. We no longer actually have to do anything else, which is cool. So we just press exit and we reboot this system. We want to get ready to remove the disk, and there you go, GRUB fully functional, and press enter. We didn't set a password. It would be good to set a password, but you don't really have to worry about that until the next go around. Root, and you can do password and make it whatever you want, and there you go. So tech SYYU. Now, oh yes, this wonderful problem that happens. So in the Arch ISO environment, we actually had internet. Now we don't. This is the wonderfulness about systemd. So system control enable DHCP CD .service. Now I've actually been told you don't need the DHCP you don't need the .service part. You just need to enable DHCP CD. I don't know. If you just want to start it so that you have internet without rebooting, you just system control star DHCP and dot service. I'm just including the dot service. I don't know if you don't need it. I don't know if you do need it. I'm not sure. I know it works this way. By all means, tell me in the comments below how wrong I am. So if you, I don't know, ping Google, you should get a response. And then now we can, yep, and there we go. So now you have a fully functional Archbox where you can download all your programs and applications off of Pacman and install your desktop environments and all that wonderful stuff. So that's pretty much it for the install guide. If you have any other problems, please do let me know. I covered Nano, I covered GRUB, I covered partitions. So I think I addressed a lot of the problems people were having. There are some problems with display managers and environments, desktop environments that people were having, and I will get to them in the future, just not right now. I actually do plan on making a video about KDE and installing KDE, because KDE, I don't know, I'm just not a fan of KDE, I guess. So if you guys have any suggestions for videos in the future, please let me know in the comment section down below, or send me a PM on YouTube. Even when I was taking that time off, when I got on YouTube, I'd still try to help people out to the best of my ability. But hope you guys had fun. Let me know in the comments if you think this method is actually more efficient than using SysLinux. But that's it. Have a good one, guys. See you next time.